Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon and you're listening to a podcast which is all about the Irish League, where it was an old school weekend in the top flight, 6 games, all at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. How retro. Linfield themselves turned back the clock, back to a time where there was better vibes in the Windsor Terraces, all thanks to beating Glentoran in the very first Bel Classico of the season. Elsewhere, last year's top 2 played out a stalemate after Larne's disappointment in Europe. We also saw Carrick Rangers and Cliftonville sit atop the table with the only 100% records in the league so far. Let's keep your pod stats pristine too. It's time for your latest weekly edition of Kick and Match. One-time Irish League podcaster and Linfield fan Mark McGuiggan, I'm sure you expected a very different podcast with me this week.
I was dreading this week, but it's coming at a very good time for us. Very much.
There had to be a part of you that thought, oh, I just cannot wait to get stuck in here.
Yeah, well, it sounds like David Healy's interview after the match last night. Yeah, just one of those ones where I was expecting to come on here and being absolutely fuming, but I'm fairly happy, all things considered.
Yeah, the headlines write themselves. Linfield in crisis after losing 6-0 to Glen. Hold on, wait, they won and they might get takeover. Is that what's happened in the past 7 days?
Yeah, quite a week for a wee club in Belfast, and it wasn't the Glens.
So let me get this right. Linfield good, yes, or what?
Linfield pretty good. I'll go along those lines. Linfield reasonable. Glentoran quite bad would be one that I would be more concerned about if I was a Glentoran fan. Very, very bad. And in what was, pretty much a penalty kick of a game for them. Linfield down in the dumps. But yeah, ended up there was only one fair winner yesterday, to be quite honest.
But would the cliche not say the most dangerous time to face an opponent is when they're at their lowest? Yeah. Linfield had nothing to lose on Saturday, bar, of course, any sort of stability within the fan base. There was an early penalty shout. We'll touch on that later, but you must admit that early goal from Leahy, that settled things. That must have felt like a massive relief for everybody within Windsor.
Oh, 1,000,000%. Just a real, a nerve settler is the only word for it. Probably coming off the Glens, sort of starting quite well. It was a fairly mixed start, I think, for both teams. But yeah, just really nice to go ahead in the game and stick with it, which is a rarity for us.
Were you somewhat rubbing your eyes, going, hold on a second, this is a Bel Classico which is happening at 3 o'clock on a Saturday? Like, it was very old school on Saturday. Like, what a busy sports sound I was a part of. There was not only 6 games, there were 7 games because Alby Flynn was out doing his championship thing. Like, that's a throwback of a weekend.
Yeah, that's what we always wanted, isn't it? Linfield beating Glentoran, that's a throwback too. It was proper football this weekend. To be honest, after all my giving off about Friday nights and how you can't get the old games and all this, I did miss it on a Friday night. I was sort of looking and going, oh, nothing on tonight. But really, really good to have everybody. It's all good, always good to hear like the goals going in across the grounds. I think I'm sort of old school that way. People with like a wee radio loving life again.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There is a certain buzz of things going around and constantly turning around to somebody else going, this person scored, that person scored, oh, they're evens there. But I was feeling slightly lonely on Friday. Like I would have watched Loughgall against Letterkenny Rangers or something on Friday. Like I was that keen for something, but alas, it was a case of us like going out like it's 2006. Out to watch the games on, it wasn't even that cold. It was kind of bright for August, and we had a whole heap of games, plenty of stories, and we have been talking about the game between Linfield and Glentoran. Like you somewhat said, is this a case of Linfield were good or just Glentoran were that bad? Like watching it from afar, aka after the game, it did feel like those players were up for it and were ready for the fight.
Yeah, well, for me, I think it was both, which is quite good when you're a Linfield fan. Linfield good, Glentoran bad. Was sort of how everybody would have probably summed that game up. Happened for us at a really good time when we were sort of obviously reeling from a really, really poor defeat to Ballymena last week. Of course, everybody's been talking about it and how bad things were last week. But totally night and day performance wise from us. I thought we were absolutely fantastic from 1 to 11. And I was fairly adamant that we played, our best 11, 1 to 11 there yesterday. It's amazing what happens when you play players in the right position. It can end up going quite well for you. But to be honest, just really, really glad to get 3 points on the board.
And maybe you can't justify it at all, but no penalty early on.
I don't think there's any angles that do it enough justice for how tight I thought it was. The angle's not fantastic.
That would be the biggest argument for it, as in like for the referee's decision. In that, if he didn't see enough, he didn't see enough. But I would feel as if I was a Glentoran fan. Well, if you think that isn't a penalty, get your yellow card out and book him for diving because
That was my point. I was fairly adamant in the stand, and those around me will note that. That I was like, if it's not a penalty, it has to be a yellow
mhm.
card. But it was probably one of those ones that was somehow 50-50 on that note. But yeah, I didn't see enough of it. And I was waiting, obviously, as I do when we beat the Glens for the highlights, just to watch them back and enjoy them. But you're waiting for that definitive angle. Probably if you had a camera in the south stand, you'd be able to see, oh, Johns has touched him, or he's leapt over him. But I didn't see enough either way. All the Glen men, of course, who I'm friends with, all 100% a penalty. Even you blue men know it's a penalty and all this. I genuinely cannot say if it was or not. Definitely a big call. I'd have been fuming if it was given first minute. Like,
The lack of Hubin. Talked last week that perhaps he hasn't had enough big game matches. He can't impact a Bel Classico when he's not on the pitch. Do you think that unsettled Glentoran in this game? Because like Jenkins has scored plenty of goals. He's become such a staple of the team over the past few years, but he is not the same player or goal scorer as Hubin. That's a big change for that whole team to try and approach what is still a big game.
yeah, 100%. Like you're going into any game without your top striker, then it's going to be a difficult afternoon for you. But I have to say, when I saw that Hoban wasn't on, I was very, very happy. Because a player of that quality and a player of that class, that experience, can always nick in with a goal. You're looking at even the way, we'll talk about this after, but the way the Glen scored, that sort of fumble in the box, that's where Hoban's going to score a goal against you in a big two derby. He's going to be that fox in the box and get in there where he's needed. Um, but it was really, really nice not to have him. I think the guy's going he's going to score goals this year again. There's no doubt. But even again, the Glen men have talked to you about it. They weren't as massively concerned because he hasn't turned up in a big two yet.
For the second goal, because the first goal we're talking about, Leahy there comes from a corner. It doesn't really matter where or how it comes from. He just won it in the back of the net. Second goal, like it's Kirk Miller with that just powerhouse of a right foot. But was it Frizzell who played that nice pass into Offord? He feels like he's been somewhat of a forgotten man for the Blues. Like he's this January signing, which some people may have felt, he's a bit of a get us to the end of the season kind of job, and we'll see then. But goes back to being a squad player. But so far, Healy's relying on him as a maybe not first names in the team sheet, but he's in the 11.
Yeah, 100%. And he's deserved that based on, what I've seen from him in the first two games, and including the European game. Fans showed their frustrations last week when he was substituted early against Ballymena, and rightly so in my eyes, because he was one of the best players on the pitch by a country mile. Really, really impressed me last week in what was a pretty turgid performance. He was one of the shining lights. But this week, by far my man of the match. Absolutely fantastic in everything that he's done. You're right as well. I was pretty underwhelmed by signing him. Obviously didn't have too good a spell up at Derry City, and was again a forgotten man there, to be honest. But it's worked out very, very well for Linfield because we've now got someone in that midfield with a wee bit of creativity.
He's like the only player, if I was saying, who can really drive but also have quick feet, nice passing, and can nip in a wee cross. That's Frizzell, isn't it?
Yeah, he's got a bit about him. Really, really, just an old school sort of attacking midfielder. He's not the biggest guy on the block. He's not gonna,
No.
he's not gonna fight too much, but I think he's fantastic with what he does. Really, really impressed me yesterday. That was my man of the match.
A player, if you're going to compare him to a fellow Irish League name, it's probably Jordan Stewart, and there he was late on getting a goal. He got more than a goal, of course, which we'll get to, but did you feel after controlling so much of the game for 90 minutes, just a bit of lack of concentration at the back? It's 2-1. Any worries at that stage?
100%. You're always worried at that. Throwback to maybe 2 seasons ago when the Crews were at Windsor and were in a bit of a bad slump. and they scored late on against us, and brought Jordan Owens on, and my heart rate was unholy. It was one of those nights where you're just waiting for a ball to go into the box and then feel conceding your weekend's ruined. But it did get, when that goal went in, I was like, flip, there's still 3 or 4 minutes here. They scored right at the start of injury time, so they really, really gave themselves a chance after not really being in the game. But I think Jordan Stewart was probably their best player yesterday. He was the only real one that was, actually doing anything going forward. Um, every sort of bit of highlights that you'll watch in this game, Jordan Stewart's the man in the middle of it all, trying to get the ball rolling, trying to get something happening for the Glens, but just didn't happen for him yesterday.
And a word on the red card. What was he doing?
Oh, straight red. An absolute straight howler of a red. It's really bad when you can hear a connection from an elbow in the stand. I sit in the front row where we sit, so maybe I'm closer to it than a lot of people. But you heard a wallop off Leahy's chin or nose or wherever he get hit. So not a good look. When you've just scored, just daft to be honest. He didn't. The ball was nowhere near him. It was just stupid red is the only way you can put it.
And then to elaborate on your point around Jordan Stewart being the player that you felt was only really adding that bit of juice, bit of creativity. It's the thing I worry about with the Glens, in that they've got a lot of really solid, firm passers, decent in the tackle. That midfield is quite solid with your do-it-all number eights, but if, let's say, Lemavati or Portadown are sticking 10 men or 11 men behind the ball, do they have someone that's going to just nip in, get between the lines? Perhaps not. Now, we don't know how long he's going to be out. It's going to be one, it could be three. If we're really getting into violent conduct with the elbow, we'll sit tight with that. But even beforehand, if there was a worry amongst Glens fans, it was, yeah, we could do with another centre back, but it's wide men. They've not really found that number 10 wide player, or even adding that Arsenal who can make a massive difference for them. Like, they've had it with O'Connor for once in a while, but not to go back into semi-ancient history, but a McMenamin style player, even if it's maybe 80%, 70% of McMenamin, I think would add a bit of more dynamism to this team. It might be the difference between them properly challenging and being away from that pack.
Yeah, I think that you're so right on that. Your point on they've got a lot of number eights, that's fine, but you need a bit of a creator. You need a 10 and wingers. That squad for me is just full of midfielders who are, you're right, combative, and they're going to stick a leg in, they're going to win you a ball halfway, and but they're just not going to have someone that will drive forward for them. I thought Ross Clark was a solid enough signing for them last year, but was totally anonymous yesterday, and everything that he did. He looked tired. He looked, well, obviously a shadow of a player that he used to be. He's lost a couple of yards of pace, but he's not that sort of 20-year-old skipping about Windsor Park with one boot on like he used to be.
Well, even at that, it's a squad game and you need to be able to change it up. I will say, like, the way you're talking about, you've just got a lot of midfielders and not much else. I mean, that's not a million miles away from what Linfield have. Like, you do seem to try and go, can we just play all centre backs and force some sort of winger to be one of the wing backs? But the difference is that, of course, you have Fitzpatrick who can knock it down, Offord who just buzzes around. Are you happy that you're seeing them two getting a chance to form some sort of combination up top?
Yeah, well, I think Offord was very, very unlucky with injuries last year. Obviously, came back on in a game against Portadown and was sort of brutally injured as such last season and was put back onto the treatment table. It's just really, really good to see them getting game time. You're totally right, because the two of them are fantastic forwards, and any team in the league would be happy to have one, never mind both of them at their arsenal. But I just really feel that they need to get a bit of game time together to see how this flows. Now, last season in Europe, at the very sort of start of last season, the two of them were getting a bit of game time. It was looking pretty good. But as I say, then injuries crept up on Offord, and we really, really missed him during the run in last season.
So that's what happened on the pitch. Linfield aren't bottom 2 weeks in a row. They've got their first victory against their big rivals in Glentoran. But drama around them continues off the pitch. Like, the pelters, the board, the players, and even the management team have got not only all summer, but particularly this past week, it's intensified. But David Healy really used his opportunity post victory to take on some of his perceived enemies. What's the reaction within the fan base to that?
Within the fan base, I can't comment for everybody, but I know that I think there was a number of things that went too far yesterday at Windsor regarding Healy's family and things. There's no sane person that can condone that within a football club. You know, it's not his family's fault that this is going wrong, or things that are becoming a bit sticky. Would be a nice way to put it. But I think he's made a rod for his own back with his comments last night. I saw someone posting around the lines of, just beat your biggest rivals. We're supposed to be, absolutely buzzing, for the rest of the week, looking forward to playing Cliftonville next week. And that's just put a dampener on the whole thing. It's not nice what happened, but it's also not the fans' fault that things have gone wrong. Listen, he's beat Glentoran. Yes, very good. That's fine. But it's something ridiculous. Like, we've only won, is it five of our last 17 games across all competitions? Not good enough, to be quite honest, for a Linfield team. Maybe less than that, to be honest. Definitely lost 10 and 17, which isn't great for anybody, never mind Linfield. So listen, there's a lot of problems at the club, from top to bottom, to be honest, at the minute, which are not going to be sorted out by slabbering at each other. It does not fix anything. But I think, even as Healy said there last week, fans do have the right to vent frustrations, but I believe it has gone a bit too far there yesterday. But it just really put a dampener on what was otherwise a really, really good day for the Blues.
So, result was there. Is there any worry that perhaps what can you do now? Because like the personnel on the team hasn't changed, and all the concerns will probably be there. Yeah, they've shown what they can do in a big game. They had that fight, they had that hunger, desire, and grit to get across the line in one of their biggest games of the season. The natural question will be, can they do it time and time again for the other 36 as well as cups? Of course, we're going to have to see there, but that's going to be the test. Okay, you've got them up after a week of huge amount of noise at the sidelines. Excellent. But the big
Mhm.
issue for the Blues has been slip ups here or there. And as much as it was whenever listening to this 7, 8, 10, 12 days ago, there's a lot of concern about that Ballymena result and what we've seen this summer. Like, one, was it? One good performance does not indicate it's fine. We're back.
Yeah. Um, Even though I want to say we're back, we're definitely not. We really need to build on that. It's worrying that the sort of stage we're at with Linfield is that a good performance is the one that's the anomaly at the minute. Whereas, in previous seasons we were, if we lost, even there's a couple of seasons ago we were on a really good run on to win the league and lost 3-0 at Moorview Park one night. That was the anomaly, and then we were able to bounce back. But now this is turning into a stage where we're getting beat a lot, and our good performances are the anomaly. Squad thickness wise, I mean, I've give off about this flat out all summer to anyone that will listen. We do not have any depth in that squad, which is our main issue, in my opinion. You look at the subs, there were none. David Healy stuck with his 11 that he had put on. I think the Glens actually only made one sub, which is Ben Gallagher coming on. So, like,
Do you know what? I was just checking that. I thought that was maybe some sort of issue with the website. No subs
no
at
subs
all.
from Healy, and one from the Glens. That shows two teams that have, well, maybe a little depth, but certainly a little amount of players that will come on and actually be difference makers. You don't need subs, you need difference makers, and that's something that we do not have. 1 to 11, that's a solid squad that would finish quite easily top half in the Irish League. But once we're creeping into December, I know everybody looks at December as this sort of month of dread of all the games coming up, but picking up wee niggly injuries, suspensions, we're looking thin on the ground, to be honest. And that is where my worries come in and where we will slip away this season.
Just to reference, subs for the Blues on Saturday was Aidan Galvin, Dylan Wells, Sean Brown, Isaac Bird, Kobe Moore, Reese Annette, and Charlie Chapman. Let's then talk about some of the other news in the lead up to Saturday. Board meetings, crisis board meetings, talk of takeover. Um, like how much, like you can even hear from the reporting, like it's early days, and I'm sure there's more than one party interested. Of course, there's been talk for a while about the idea of Linfield wanting or needing investment, but the idea that they may become some sort of feeder club to Rangers, like a feeder club to anybody, we can talk about that, but does that concern you at all?
Not in the slightest. I think we have to sort of swallow our pride here and say if we are going to be a feeder club as such, we're going to be bottom of the food chain. You know, we are not going to be getting the best players from all these sort of link ups. You have to look at it as an if this was to come to fruition with Linfield and Rangers, you're looking at Linfield getting players from Rangers youth system, which has not been excellent for the past number of years. You know, the best players that you're coming through at Rangers are the likes of Ross McCausland and stuff who are quite literally not good enough for the Scottish League. So in my opinion, if you're not good enough for the Scottish League, you're probably going to be good enough for the Irish League. So if we're gonna be getting players like that level who are going to come over here, learn their trade in a league that were, you know, famously this league's a lot more physical. There's a lot less sort of, you know, youth players playing. There's every chance that I see that going positively. But the way that Rangers have been managed recently, on and off the pitch, doesn't fill me with confidence that they would even be interested in coming over here and messing up here as well.
But surely you can achieve that without having stock being handed over, control of the club being handed over. Like, I am not trying to cause an argument or be provocative here, but Rangers taking over Linfield, or someone who's high up within Rangers taking over Linfield, like, why not just rebadge it up as Rangers Belfast? Like, because there's so much connection to that club already. So if you're just gonna,
Pretty much what it is,
yeah,
isn't it?
but no, no, it's not. That's not what Linfield are. But if all of a sudden Linfield are the Rangers junior youth team, and anybody that's good goes straight over, no matter what, and you're there to try and develop players that if they're good enough, away they go. If not, tough. It's it just feels like no separation there would feel very odd.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, it's early stages. Everybody knows that it's very early stages. I it could be.
And it could be anybody. There could be. There's been talk of other investors, right? So we're not getting obsessed with senior member of Rangers board thinking about it, right? But it's strange story.
Yeah, it's certainly one that'll sell headlines, you know, across papers and across whatever you want this weekend. Um, but it's one that I can see going either very well or very poorly. But we also have to remember that this all has to be voted in by Linfield members. So this is like, you know, stage
Do you think
one.
there's a hunger within Linfield members?
There's a hunger from Linfield members, certainly the ones that I'm speaking to have our club back at the top, which is what we want, of course. But I really don't think that Linfield members are ready or willing to hand over total control of a club that has famously not had this. Um, you know, they're not willing to go, you know, a full rebrand of a club just to get money in. I think there's a lot of old sort of sensible heads in that membership group who are going to have to look through absolutely everything before they even think of beginning to vote for this in because they are not willing to hand the club over to just some tycoon who wants to have his fun for, you know, say 3 years and then leave us in an absolute state probably worse than what we're in now. So I think there's enough sensible heads in that membership group that will think about this long and hard before anything's done.
Well, we will sit tight and see how this all progresses out with somewhere between 2 weeks and 10 days left of the transfer window. Are you hopeful things could change? And if there is going to be any change squad wise, where do you want to see these reinforcements come in? What position?
Depth wise, we need just wingers. To be honest, Kirk Miller's our only sort of out and out winger left at the club. We've no real sort of left winger. Ethan McGee can become sort of this fullback hybrid sort of guy, as he has been for the last couple of years, fitting in across.
Has McGee found his position yet?
McGee's position is where he's playing at the minute. I think he's fantastic yesterday. Absolutely fantastic. Again, one of our better performers in the Ballymena game, but definitely yesterday was really good. He's solid, and we just need a wee bit more depth, to be honest. We've gone from having a couple of players in each position to sort of one or two subs, and Nolan's out injured already, and I believe he'll be out for about 6 weeks. So that then leaves only two fit centre halves. Well, certainly first team centre halves, which is going to be difficult. So we need depth across the board, and a wee bit of hope from maybe an aspiring winger or something. We never know.
One final word then on Glentoran. It's a feeling, an emotion which continues to bubble up. I'm not quite sure where from, just in the context of where we are within the season and what happened last year. But Declan Devine, how hot is that seat he's sitting on?
I'd say it's hotter than a poker, to be
Really?
honest. I wouldn't fancy being in that job. From what I have seen on Twitter, from what I've heard from Glentoran fans in person, that's a man under severe pressure. Because there's so many calls for the manager's head right now, based on, European run non-existent. To be fair, tough
Yeah.
draw. But not where they want to be at the minute. And I would say there's an empty seat for him up in Derry City that he would be very, very keen to take. And would that involve Tiernan Lynch coming back down the road and managing the Glens? Who knows? That's
Well,
a free story for you there, one that we've just made up.
the Lynch thing is very much two and two being put together. Does it equal four? I don't know. But does that add to the feeling, or all of a sudden all these Glentoran fans going, oh, maybe he looks hotter than our boy? I really can't see Devine being the man at Derry again, but
I don't know. It's probably one that McDermott could come back out of Iran. You never know. But it's just one of those ones where a manager who has had a very, very sort of on thin ice one has just lost the derby. So it's never going to look good for him that way. But we shall see. I just don't know what your next move is if you're Glentoran, because you've kept the manager in over a transfer window. He has signed who he's wanted to sign, and now the fans are calling for his head 2 games in. Difficult place to be in my eyes.
I don't know how much a victory would have even helped that, because they would have thought, yeah, of course, you beat Linfield, they're rubbish at the minute. It's
Mhm.
different when you lose, of course. But the other big game that we saw on Saturday didn't give us all the sparks and excitement that we hoped we would. But sure, that's what top games are like in this league often. It was Coleraine against Larne. And this comes with the massive asterisks around Larne's European antics. Let's talk about that. I watched it all online, and I did feel, it's easy to say this now, of course, but I did feel not getting that goal at home was going to cost them. Maybe in the long run, it's hard to really say that it did or it didn't, but they didn't get across the line. And in fact, I thought, well, they've drawn after 90 minutes. At least they've got something for the coefficient. No, they didn't, because they lost in extra time. $0 in the coefficient, which is another story in itself. Larne are out, but they've got one final bite of the cherry, and it's against those old pals, Lincoln Red Imps. They couldn't beat their Cypriot opposition, but not that they expected to. By all counts, this is going to be a much tougher opposition. But even if Larne do get past the Red Imps, there are serious issues with our coefficient and where the Northern Irish League is sitting within Europe. It's not something I was massively paying attention to, but our old pal, NI coefficient on X, has been sweating the small stuff about it. It's maybe the big stuff now. We're out of the top 50, which means we're going to go down to 3 spots, and may terror and agony reign from there. So a lot of pressure on Larne to do the business now against the Red Imps. I don't know if I would say they were unlucky against Iberia, but it was a huge opportunity missed.
You were obviously at the first leg, in which everybody sort of has the same opinion that Lawrence Tudor really got a couple of goals. Is that sort of the general feeling of it all?
Well, should have got a goal somewhere. I thought Iberia, it's so strange seeing the styles. Like, they were a team built of very tricky, tight, kind of fit, pacey players, but weren't particularly great at the rough and tumble of it, which is where Lawrence succeeded. Now, you still have to take on a team who can tackle and move, but where Larne were seeing success were on the counters at times from a lot of set pieces. So there was moves which they couldn't finish. It's not like it was a complete disaster on the pitch. It was just unlucky. But going all the way to Georgia to Tbilisi, and now Larne do have this advantage themselves against Red Imps, but that lack of goal meant it was a far more open game. They didn't want to push forward because they knew they could be punished by Iberia, but in turn They wanted to get a goal themselves. FC Iberia got the goal. It's funny, I was watching it, and I don't want to a pile on, but I thought, coming in and grabbing these balls out of the air from corners and set pieces, Ferguson looked so strong and defiant, and we all know what he can do in a penalty shootout. In the big moments, I thought he was lacking for Larne. Should have really been better for that goal, the opening goal, which was just a nice pass in over the top. Then Larne come back straight away. Here comes Bent, who's been this makeshift third defender using that height and strength, powering up the pitch. Young local lad James Simpson finding the back of the net, and you thought, how could Larne push on and get the goal in this second leg? They were hoping to try and catch them once again, but at some point within that extra time, FC Iberia just thought there's a soft underbelly centrally here against Larne. They kept playing these balls over the top, kind of poked passes where hopefully it would just drop down, and that foot race between the defender and the attacker, they were going to win. They did. Nice little touch to get that goal, and with a whole second half, 15 minutes of extra time, Larne couldn't find the second goal, and they've still got another go at it, but if they'd won that, it would have been European football, and it just was a case of they were not outclassed. Yeah. They were not completely destroyed, and at some point you've got to win these even games, don't 100%.
You? 100%. Like, I thought when the draw was made that it was going to be a tight one. I wasn't really looking at that going, that's a game Larne will get absolutely something. But again, I just didn't know whether they had it in them just to, get it over the line. And unfortunately for our teams in the European spots, again, we don't get it over the line. Larne obviously the only team that have got it over the line recently. So it's just frustrating that due to lack of performances from everybody in the league over the past couple of seasons, that we're now in a position where the Irish League is behind, as even you said, like Armenia this year, which is a tiny, tiny country. Size of Armagh, you say?
Andorra.
Sorry, wrong one. Where Armenia in that list? Surely Armenia are pretty low down too.
But Andorra is a ski resort with the population of Derry. So look, I don't. Maybe I'm missing some sort of logistics in that league powering forward, but it's all helped by Inter Escalades or whatever. Like
Inter de Escalades, and all that.
If you went to wherever that team is, I'm sure it would look closer to 5 Mile Town than it would be in Enniskillen. Like, so, whatever, it's the nature of the game. I'm sure they're feeding off Spanish players, but Larne can only do what they can. It's not like other teams in the Irish League did us any justice, not only this year, but across many different years. But to be higher up, you have to win, and it's not, you can't just be there for the sake of it and go, we're unlucky.
You just can't turn up. Like, there's the four below us are Luxembourg, Montenegro, Wales, and San Marino. Montenegro, the only non-micro state to not have a team qualified for the Conference League. So they're the only ones that are smaller than us. That are below us, that are actually not a micro state. And on that note, Armenia, after slagging them off, are 33rd of all. So they're much better than we are.
Yeah.
It's just so worrying that this, it's a massive fall. We've dropped 4 in the coefficient this year. Andorra jumped up, Georgia jumped up. Like, to name me one other Georgian player than Kvaratskhelia. You can't do it. Like that's the level that we're talking about. Just so annoying.
You wonder just how much maybe you might say, maybe the Irish League should be doing better because they're so close to the Scottish and English leagues, maybe even the Welsh League. But in turn, you might say that they're just carving up players who are getting opportunities there instead of with us. I don't know. You could get into the absolute minutiae of why League X is doing well compared to other teams and investors, etc. But we are very much behind the 8 ball, and there's a separate story here around just the league and how they don't or do help a team like Larne in these big moments. But the pressure is on now, Larne, to get into Europe, and even if they do, will that stop us from dropping down? I really couldn't tell you how good or bad Lincoln Red Imps are after that defeat a couple of years ago, but Larne are going to have to be on their A game. But the news or the controversy connected to that, and we talked about it a bit last week, on if Larne and Coleraine, were they going to play this game, because all the other teams, who has been Bangor and Ballymena and the likes, Limavady I think as well, have said don't worry about Larne, we'll chill out and we'll play you sometime later on. Coleraine didn't take them up on that offer, and it results in a 0-0 draw. Larne hang on. Coleraine weren't able to get a result similar to what they had early on last season at home, beating Larne, so they don't get a huge advantage. Well, it's better than a loss, I guess. But Larne, as much as they said, well, it's up to Coleraine and hope to work with us, I think what we heard from Gary Haverin, they aren't particularly pleased that this game went ahead.
Yeah, he went with the old David Jeffrey, bitterly disappointed, didn't he? I can understand his frustration because it's happened before when, you know, did Linfield Coleraine stop for 1 year? I think Coleraine were nearly, their hands were tied in the whole thing about, the game getting cancelled. I can't quite remember. But he was obviously very, very frustrated, and so you would be. You've gone out to Georgia, which isn't around the corner, by all accounts. So it's a long, long week for them. But then again, Coleraine are well within their rights. If that's the league rules to say, what, we're not gonna cancel that. Well, we'll just keep playing. And Coleraine had a massive advantage and weren't able to take it.
Do you think you kind of back Coleraine doing that rather than doing the kind of nicey, oh sure, don't worry about it, lads, one for all?
In a way,
Like they don't have to.
they don't have to. There's no pushover element of it all. But I just don't think that Coleraine should be forced to cancel a game where they feel like that, we have a bit of an advantage coming in here. Say it's January time and Larne end up with a postponed Irish Cup game and they have to play on the Tuesday and they're playing again on the Friday night or something against Coleraine. The game's not going to get cancelled, is it? So it's a real 50-50 moment. So I'm not quite sure where I stand on it all. I'd certainly like Linfield to have an advantage like that if that was happening for us. But you look at, even again, we go back to Scotland again. It's not one that happens in Scotland very often when Scotland, we're looking at, maybe flip. Is there still 4 or 5 teams left in qualifying? They'll not be getting a break this weekend. You can't cancel half the Scottish League.
Like, it's not like Larne were, not that I think Larne had a disaster at all either, but plenty of teams like that Shamrock Shamrock Rovers result. The potential opponent there of Larne, like the people are saying, if Larne get through that, what a brilliant achievement they could get in Rangers. Rangers did themselves no favours in that game. So look, everybody can't be Shelburne getting a draw against Ajax at home. Look, again, helps the coefficient League of Ireland. They're doing far better than the Irish League there, but. There was even talk from Gary Haverin, why can't Niffle get involved here? Is it really Niffle's place to start telling teams, sorry, you have to make way for our European players? I know it might be what happens in some other European FAs, but I think you'd be pretty annoyed that, okay, we've got a league here, we're full-time teams, and I know Gary Haverin is saying, there's full-time and then there's full-time, and it's just a lot of logistics for Larne to try and work on, and why is the league potentially hurting their chances? The whole question is, was it short-sighted of Coleraine if Larne don't get through? Because if they miss out in one of those European places,
Coleraine could be the team affected.
They might not be.
I can't see them being the team affected if Coleraine finish outside of the top 3. It's only Coleraine's fault. But it's one of those.
And by the way, if we go down to 3, it won't happen next year. It'll be the year after.
Yeah. So I think there's people that beat the drum for the whole Irish League coefficient in the summer, but I don't mind it in the summer. Obviously, I don't want to see the Glens getting the flipping Champions League run going and making an absolute millions. I'm a blue man. I don't want to see that, but for the sake of the summer, can we not accept that? Hold on, for everybody's sake, it's best that our teams win. Certainly in those early rounds, because as you said, I think it was on your the first podcast of the year. It felt like there was no European games at all. It just felt like there's Europe and it's gone, and that was it.
Mark, are you so anti-summer football you think we shouldn't be playing the league until September?
Just wait until September, yeah. Just make sure it's definitely autumn. Autumn. As soon as the first leaf falls from a tree, that's when the league should start.
Well,
I just feel that we should be giving each other a bit of a chance. But when there is no legislation for to say this, X, Y, and Z must happen, then you're into the belly of the beast of the teams are in charge of it, which never
what do
ends
they
well.
make
There's
of this
always going to be
game?
someone
You might
unhappy.
say that Larne are probably a lot happier in the fact that it was a draw, but both teams had their chances, as minimal as they were.
Massive chances for both teams, just never happened for either of them. Um, what looked to be a very, very good crowd of Coleraine as well. Already for the first day of the season.
Hold on, stop the world here. We have to talk about this. Guard of honor for Larne from
Did
Coleraine.
not know that. Oh, woke nonsense.
Like, that might be the most, if we're talking quote unquote woke nonsense. And I'm not saying this is my view on it, but if we're putting in a category, that can't, like, surely not.
I'm not a fan of that. Don't like that at all.
For last season, like, I think you
That's
should be forced to do it. If a team wins it before the end of the season,
yes.
I think you should be forced, no matter what, because that's just the way it goes. They've won it before the league season. Tough. They're your champions for now. But after last year, don't know about that.
So did Larne walk out first and be clapped on, and then the Larne ones clapped Coleraine for winning the Irish Cup? Is that what happened? Is that what we're going for? Were Linfield then invited up for winning the League Cup? Carrick for the County Antrim Shield? Nonsense. I'm not a fan of that. I didn't even know that happened. You've annoyed me now. Oh, that's so annoying. That's so daft.
Maybe it's all for the big crowd, get clap the champions on. But
Happy
yeah,
clappy.
like, good quality team on both sides. You can see that for them, and I think a lot of sides are going to be ripped apart by both these teams. But yeah, you might even say that maybe Larne were battled ready. Like maybe Coleraine still are yet to find their gears. That's how it feels like for me with Coleraine, and that we just haven't seen them properly get to where they are.
Yeah, the ball hasn't got rolling for them yet. It's just one of those things. It might take a wee time to get everything going and going properly for them. Dear help the team that they're playing when it gets going, because that Korean side is absolutely fantastic from top to bottom in my eyes. I obviously haven't been on the podcast this year, but Korean are my tips for the title. There's no doubt, and I'm not alone in that. But it just might take a wee while to get going. Not 100% sure why it hasn't got going, because I haven't seen them in the flesh this year. But even squad depth wise, Coleraine have things that Linfield do not have, and that is usable substitutes. So listen, when the ball gets rolling for these two teams, it'll be really, really proper battles. And the two of them, I don't see them being too many nil-nils between the two for the rest of the season.
I reckon, Mark, we should talk about the team currently in pole position to be league champions come the end of the season. It is, of course, Cliftonville. Another big win for them. Matthew Tipton was thinking, oh no, here comes Bangor. They're going to bully these tricky little boys off the pitch. And it was the nippiness of Cliftonville that really put Bangor to the sword. 3-0. And a couple of players like Ben Quinn getting a goal. Like, are we starting to wonder, is this Cliftonville side going to be players this year?
Well, they certainly impressed me midfield wise and defensively. Last week at Solitude, ended up heading up to that game between them and Crusaders from the first ever North Belfast derby. After saying I've no real interest in the league this year, I'm going to other games. That's me.
Football, never heard of it.
Football, yeah. Who is she? But just I just didn't think they had a out and out goal scorer. Again, not something that we've seen, because the goals have come from everybody bar a striker for Cliftonville this season. So I just don't know where Mr. Tipton's pulled the fact that Bangor were going to perform. I don't know where he's got that from, because Bangor bang average. But anyway,
Well, his feeling was worst pitch ever at Clandy Boy. His words, not mine. I'm paraphrasing, and that Cliftonville wouldn't be able to pass the ball. Such was the situation with the pitch. Insert memories of last year. And there was none of that. There was even, was it McClellan who hit that nice little volley or half volley and
great
just
goal,
slammed at the back of the net, you
great
know?
goal. All the goals were actually really nice in that
Yeah.
game. Third one in particular also very nice. Um,
Like, it's not a collection of broken toys, but there is a certain Reclamation FC about Cliftonville this year.
yeah, I mean it's a series of players who you know, on their own don't really strike me as fantastic footballers, but put them all together, build that team. Now you can hear Jim Magilton on if you watch the highlights back. Jim was very happy with what they were doing on Saturday. So what I'm trying to say is a very very decent squad of players and a very very good manager. So that's something that every team in this league would be busting for. Team playing together for each other, and getting results early on in the season.
And I think we've got our first cliche of the season on this podcast potentially emerging, and that is that Mr. Hale's back again for Cliftonville. He's good again.
He's allowed to be a year off. He is. He's been one of the best players in the league for I don't know how long, probably about 5 years, 5 or 6 years now. Um, just an absolute tank in the midfield for them. Really, really good player. Um, just one that every time you see him on a team sheet, you're going, oh no, why is he playing? Um,
But he looks
as
sharp and
sharp as anything.
hungry and just so hard to play against. Like
Again,
there's not a massive amount of proper game winners or scary players in the league, but he looks to start this season so far. He looks like one of them and is going to be not only like a huge player for Cliftonville on the pitch, but he looks to be taking that armband very seriously. Like he looks like a proper leader, and he's rubbing off on all these other players around him.
100%, and that is what you're going to be looking for in any captain, someone that can raise the game of all the players around him, and he's 100% doing that. From what I've seen of him so far this season, he looks to have his head screwed on, ready to go for this year. And Cliftonville have certainly proved that they are going to be no easy feat for any team going up to Solitude or away from home.
What do we learn from Bangor in this game? Because it's their first game of the season. They've only played one, and look, they get themselves ripped a new one slightly by a very tricky team in Cliftonville. Like there's not many teams built like the Reds who are gonna pass, and run at you with the confidence that they clearly have, and like they haven't had a huge amount of new names. Like I'm going to talk about some other teams who haven't had a huge amount of new names, and it feels like it's added to their advantage. But what people on this podcast have been saying is that they didn't end the season last year particularly well, and it's not like you had to beat Cliftonville in your opening game of the season again, or you're going to get relegated. But concerns, they're there, and you don't need a microscope to find them.
Yeah, I think everybody's sort of tipping them to be one of the teams in and around the bottom of the league. Um, McCulloch, a very sort of sensible signing, a player who has been in the Irish League for long enough and knows the game. The only two signings that have come in are Jeremy Rodriguez and Lucas McRoberts, one from Ayr and one from San Fernando. So not big
Tell
massive.
you what, some scouting department those boys must
Yeah,
have.
somebody's been on their holidays and they found that guy Jeremy Rodriguez. Um, Listen, are they names that are going to strike fear into the hearts of anybody? Absolutely not. I just do not see where you even watch the highlights back, and I know that I'm keep going back to the fact that you can't judge anything on just watching the highlights a lot of the time. But their one chance was a scrappy chance, one that Ben Arthur scuffed at and missed. It wasn't doesn't even seem like one of those games where they were unlucky to lose three. I think three might have been just the minimal amount that Cliftonville were able to score. So I wouldn't want to be up there this season. I think it could be a long, long year for them.
Well, a team who could definitely been up there had they got the result, and it looked good for them early on, was Ballymena, and maybe the shock, unless you're counting Linfield being good against the Glens of the weekend, might have been Crews beating Ballymena. Like you could say this is Ballymena reverting to form of last year, Crusaders. Like I felt as though I saw something last week, and then I was told, "Oh, maybe you didn't." And I'm not getting too excited off the back of this game, all right? But the fact that they went a goal down, particularly at home, Crusaders able to fight back. I do think like the Sky Blues were somewhat architects of their own downfall here, but huge result for the Crews there, especially early on in the season.
Massive. Bruce, as everybody knows, were last year's, surprise whipping boys, I suppose. I don't think anybody saw them being that bad as they were last year. But listen, the games that are going to keep Crusaders out of that relegation zone and out of that relegation fight are going to be those games at home against, the bottom six as such. That's a fantastic result for them coming from 1-0 down so early on in a game. Again, I'm gonna call back to the highlights, but you watch the highlights very early on, and Ballymena are absolutely all over them. And I'm sure the Show Road faithful were fearing the worst, but listen, a well deserved win for the Crews from what I can see.
Disappointing if you're a Ballymena fan. Like, results like this are going to come, and there's not this pressure where they're going to have to win every single week, but they have such a brilliant performance against Linfield. They rolled yous away from home. They must have thought, let's keep this going. And
Yeah,
they've missed that opportunity.
certainly two very different, you know, home journeys, I'm sure. They were going from Windsor last week on top of the world, and then they go to the Cruise, who, as everybody knew, was pretty poor last year. And just coming home with nothing. I just don't know. Obviously, you're not seeing it all. But were they still on that sort of, oh yeah, we've got an early goal here, we'll just see this out sort of thing. Um, but it just looked to be a team who were, as you say, reverted back to last year's performances and not really up to where they were.
This is going to sound like it's anti-cruise propaganda, and maybe I'm just very conscious of this because I'm getting it thrown at me online, all right? But it felt, watching it the way I've seen it after the game, is that Ballymena started strong, got the goal, then you have like a nice little play out to the right, cross comes in, McCallion, per bit of positioning and work there to knock it into his own goal rather than knocking it away. 1-1, easy doors. Then Ballymena might feel as though Toure was fouled in the lead up to the goal. Ball then comes in, and it's Wardell who, finds the back of that quite nicely. And then, Crews dig in. Not that Crews were pretty good at digging in last year, so you got to give them credit there. But sometimes you see with particularly teams who are trying to find themselves a wee bit, when they're up against it, when they're a goal down trying to chase it, it's just a totally different type of game. And then, of course, you're going to go back to what happened super late on. I think it was an injury time where actually McKee had scored for Ballymena, and then it was chalked off. And I'm not sure why. It looks as though it may be due to some sort of foul or maybe an offside or something within the box. And perhaps it was. But I can see if I was a Ballymena fan thinking, we really should have got something out of it. And it was maybe they should have at least a draw.
Yeah, I think what from what I saw of the Crews second goal, I thought that the Ballymena fans behind the goal were calling that for a goal kick. But the ball had actually gone out, was my opinion on that one. Not 100% sure whether that's right or not, but that was my viewing of it. I can't see, I'm the same as you, I can't see where that one's come from for the second goal. But
No, if it's a foul, I can't see it. Or it's
no,
very soft.
I can't see it. But listen, Ballymena will be all right this year. I think it's not crisis stations obviously for Oran Kearney yet, but I think there's a lot of players in that squad that'll turn up for them week in week out.
Absolutely. And look, they've got a quality keeper in Walsh who's done that in the league. Allen looks tricky. McKee's already getting amongst the goals. I mean, are these not the type of players that Linfield would want in their squad?
I don't think we need them anymore, mate. They've had their day.
We've got Andy
Uh,
Frizzell. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the big thing for them is going to be the goals. And McKee looks sharp. And even at that, you've got Igor Rakowski, who's a real fox in the box. Allen dragging it up from midfield as well. But here, give the Crews their dues. They fought back. They hung on. Huge win, especially on at home. And yeah, I think one of maybe the biggest surprise of the season so far. We'll shift then to a team who is near the top of the league, and it's because they're able to follow up on their victory last week with another victory away from home. Irish League, or top flight Irish League football at the Limerick Valley Showgrounds is back. And Carrick Rangers were able to spoil the party. And I think it's just because of the state of that kit. I like that away kit
I
early
love
on,
that.
but there's just, I don't know if the shorts work.
To me, it looks like the printers run out of ink on the orange shirt, and they've just been left with that nice wee remainder of orange arms and then a white belly. Nah, weird one. Not really for me.
Oh, and I forgot
Um,
to say this. Why did Glentoran wear their jaundice kit against Linfield? Is this going to be a thing now where apparently maybe it is, and it's a color blindness thing. But like, are you guys no longer allowed to play green against blue now?
I haven't seen them
Are
play
you
green
going to
against
play
blue.
your little maroony wine kit at the
Yeah,
Oval now this season?
the Rouge kit. Um,
Mm.
I don't know why that is. I can't see it happening, to be honest. They always had that black kit against us recently. Even at home. I think that was that not was that a McDermott thing? Can't really remember. But yeah, odd one. Don't like that. But anyway, but yeah, that young fella, he's a good player, great player.
Isn't he?
Young
Another
fella, great.
goal. Like, we'll have to see if the wheels can continue to get on, grease them up nice and well. Like, they lose Lecky early on in this game, which again is what they need to keep tape up for this to be a proper force this year. But look, away from home, going up Limavady, it doesn't really matter how or just the nature of it. Just get the goals, get the 3 points, and 2-1. Happy days.
Yeah, no complaints from Carrick so far this season. 100% record. I'm just pretty amazed
Like, they
with the
haven't had the biggest tests yet, but
no, but
still.
you still have to get the points on the board. You still get the same amount of points no matter who you're playing. That old cliche. But it's impressive from Baxter that he's been able to, keep all that squad fit for 2 games in a row. But listen, they're well coached. They were always well coached last season in my eyes. Um, Gave Linfield some very, very difficult games last year, and I'm sure that will happen um across this season. It's just going to be a case of how high they can finish up and just stay well away from the trouble at the bottom of the table because I think
Uh,
they're well better than that, 100%.
yeah, I think they're this year's Dungannon. As in what
Oh,
they've seen
big
in two
call.
previous years. I just think they could easily just get these victories time and time again. Like, they'll be tricky against the top sides. Maybe it'll all fall apart, but this is a very astute, well weathered team. And I don't know how much that pitch really helped them on Saturday. I think home comforts are going to be key for Carrick, but I think they'll just slip up and goals win you games, etc., etc. All those cliches add up to, I think there's a real space here to get fifth and sixth, and at the minute it looks like it's going to be Carrick and Cliftonville if
Yeah,
things continue
absolutely.
after the two games that we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of potential for Carrick to step up and be that, as you say, Dungannon of old. Um, it just looks like a real solid team. That I mean, they're not gonna win the league. They might win a cup as they did last year, but it just has the basis of a team that can do whatever they need to do and no more. They're not gonna run away with a league title or anything ridiculous like a Leicester, but they just seem to have everything covered up to the level they need to, if you know what I mean.
Like a lot of sides
Yeah,
in and around that
yeah.
position. It's going to be about, can they stay healthy? Can players get on a good run? And will suspensions be kind to them?
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely a good start for them.
It was, as I said, there our first viewing of the Limavady Showgrounds. We'll be seeing it a lot more this year after talk that perhaps we weren't going to. Like, they've got a new carpet there, they've got wee stands, etc. Feels to me like a weird combination of, and again, how diverse can grounds look, but it feels like Lakeview mixed with Ballinamallers, kinda.
Yeah, nice wee mix. Sort of like a mini Mornview sort of setup
Yeah,
for us with Lakeview. Is what I thought of it. I'm sure they'll be very, very happy to be back up again. Get a number of good crowds in, and I'm sure all the Belfast teams will travel well to them. Definitely.
yeah, that's what they'll rely on. Home fixture's going to be key, and yeah, like, I don't think after playing the Glens away and a tough opposition in Carrick at home, it's hard to judge one way or the other. Like, this is just a 2 week span any other time of the year, but as at the start of the season you start to try and pencil in how this all goes. Of course they'll want to get some sort of points quite quickly. What will their attacking outlay be? How sturdy will they be at the back? We're going to have to just sit tight with that. Hard to really judge our Limavady assessment currently. And then we go to our final game, a game I was at. from that weekend, and that being Portadown against Dungannon. Two losses in a row to start his managerial career in the Portadown hot seat for David Jeffrey, and Dungannon get up and running with a victory. Strange kind of game because, like, first and foremost, a goal from an indirect free kick. Hey, don't see a lot of them.
No, you don't see them at all. Never mind the goal from one. What was the Portadown defence doing? Really daft. A
So if
2 yard pass.
yeah, like I'm strangely going to have a lot to say about Portadown because it's the only team that I've seen twice so far,
Yeah.
because that's been my radio assessments, and I will, and as people know, oftentimes I'm being sent out to Loughgall a lot more than I am Coleraine. All right, so there might be a lot of Portadown viewing for our pal Pete, and let's also say we all know the prediction here. Okay, so there's not any sort of like trying to fingers and ears. It's everything's fine. La 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 la. Portadown have lost away to Carrick, and now they've lost at home to Dungannon. My assessment, even though there was a lot of huffy fans at Shamrock Park on Saturday as I left, is that this is a team who's brought a lot of players who don't know the league or new players into this side. A lot of them are starting. Like, even amongst the media, it's like a game of, and who is that? And why is that? And, like, the current discussion is, Dominic Dos Santos Martins, do we have to do the Dos Santos part? Apparently, yes. Apparently, yes. So none of
DDS.
this Don Martins.
We nickname.
No, it's what? Ooh, was it
DDSM.
DDSM? No. DDSM. I don't think that's going to catch. The only people allowed to call Martins is Portadown on the graphics, seemingly, for their team sheet. But there's a lot of random. Like, I will tell you, like, Finn Flanagan played, or did he? You don't know because you're not paying attention. These are players that are going to pop up for Portadown, which now I have an opinion on because I've seen them twice. I'll say this about Dungannon. They look like the Dungannon of old, very competent, happy enough to pass it out. Maybe just don't have the same juice that they used to. But I tell you, who does have plenty of that? That Sean McAllister boy's a good player, you know.
Very greedy on the free kick, though, I thought. Just sort
No.
of pumped it. Well,
No,
you
like, that's
just
the only thing.
bought it.
Like, it took about 5 minutes for that free kick to happen, and the only thing I could say to anybody else is tap that off and let McAllister rollick it. He did that, and of course it popped Chris Lowe for him to knock it in, and then they don't get another goal. So it's a team, like, they bring in Junior. There was concerns at the start of the season. What's their attacking outlay going to be? I think those concerns haven't gone away, but as long as they have McAllister, they have such a great player. He's fantastic to watch. He can drive, he can score, he can do everything.
Got a lot about him. Really, really does. A player who's going to really, really annoy a lot of other teams because,
100%.
like, he'd probably fit into, I would say, maybe 10 out of the 12 teams in the league.
No, he fits into every team.
You think he fits into Larne
He
and
has this.
Coleraine?
Yes, he fits
You
into
think
every
so?
team. He's got the height and the physicality. Now, is he getting dragged off after 70 minutes? Maybe. And don't make me try and squeeze him in properly within that Korean team. But like, he would be such an exciting player for Linfield, I think. He for Larne, where do you? It's a shape thing, it's a style thing, because you to get the best out of him, you got to accommodate him. But like, outside of him, I don't know if there was anybody that was really scary for Dungannon. Like, he could get the ball and he could just beat a man, and like, he's just got such a great right foot. He's got it all. Obviously, the questions have been is like how much he can train. You know, what's his health there. But if this is a guy who wants to progress on, sorry, Dungannon fans, he's got it all. I love watching him.
Yeah, listen, to me, as you say, you can't really, put him into that Coleraine team and say, he'd replace X, Y, or Z, and he'd make Coleraine a lot better. I think he's solid, like, really, really.
It's because he can play centrally. He's not really a striker, but can be a striker.
Yeah.
He can play centrally as well as someone who can properly drive into the channels. Like, he's not a wide man, I don't think.
No, I don't either. I think he's too sort of tall and not nippy enough to be a wide man, but anywhere from 6 forward in the middle, you could slot him in somewhere. Really, really
So
good player.
now, what then I'll say about Dungannon is that now it was the full time start of Glacken. I think he's maybe got a bit of time just to get him back up to being that real terror he can be. But it's hard to say too much because Dungannon pretty much they had that goal and they were happy to sit in. And then for Portadown, they definitely find that's two slow starts for Portadown. One game they lose a player after 27 minutes, they're on 10 men. The other one they're a goal down after 13 minutes. They don't look like I called them disjointed on the radio, and they are. But that's naturally going to happen because you don't have a whole lot of Irish League experience in there. But what they do have is, I think a lot of these players have pedigree, might not be the word, but they have got traits and attributes. I've been seeing online this idea that this team's far worse than the Portadown team of last year. Nonsense. This team is a massive upgrade to some of the Portadown teams that I saw last year. That back line looks strong. Yeah, they've let themselves down with a pass back and a dodgy bit of defending against Carrick. But they played like a 5 at the back, but it was a lot more progressive. This guy Hewitt that they have, watch him cross the ball. He might be my new obsession. He can really do something with it. Now, there was no one up top to do anything with it, but at least he's crossing the ball. So, like, there's a situation here where Portadown are bottom of the league, and Ross Welsh is thinking, the 1 year, which I panic. What did I do? But I think there is definitely a scenario where, a bit like Linfield and getting that goal, Portadown need a bit of confidence, need that goal, and once they learn how to score, because I don't know if they know how to do that yet, they could be something. They definitely have a bit more compared to Dungannon in that, like, Falls didn't have a particularly great game, but Teelan worked his backside off. And then we haven't even talked about this. Is Ben Kennedy the biggest surprise of the season, transfer wise?
Random signing. I texted a couple of my Portadown friends straight away, and I was like, "What are you doing? Why? Why has this happened?" Um, I can see it happening. Like coming off the bench is sensible for him. Like he could be a very good impact player. Really, really odd signing. And just a player who hasn't got the ball rolling. Um, ever since really coming back to the Irish League. There has been massive flashes of a very, very good footballer in there at his time at the Cruise. Massive, but consistency is non-existent for the guy.
I think at the Cruise he was maybe the best player in the league during stretches.
But that's what I mean. Stretches, flashes of brilliance, and then disappears for 10 games.
Yeah, and that's clearly what.
That's why he's at Portadown, let's be honest.
Yeah, well,
If he
but
was a
that's
brilliant,
clear. What Portadown are hoping, like
yeah, get the flashes
they're
and keep him up.
yeah,
You know, he gets
they're hoping that they have that kind of player. Like, where have we heard this before? Because when I first saw it, I thought, oh, don't know about that. But where have we heard this before? Player hasn't really worked out recently. He was good a few years ago, but I don't know now. And is there really much left? Are they going to fight? Now are they going to be hungry? You could be talking about Paul Heatley. You could be talking about Jordan Stewart. You could maybe talk about players like maybe Lecky. Now I'm talking about a lot of Carrick players there, right? But in recent times, there's been lots of they were good a few years ago, but not expecting them to do that now. Ha ha ha. And look what we've seen with how Carrick have been playing and what they've got out of some of those players in recent times. Look at Jordan Stewart, such a key man for Glentoran. So, not saying he's going to follow along those lines, but I've somewhat looked at it. And watching that Portadown team on Saturday, I thought, you don't have a massive amount of game winners yet. And is it really a bad thing to have more? Now, you can't just add more to infinity. But a team that lacks Irish experience, does he add it? I'm just not totally in the same place that a lot of people are, where they're expecting this to end in tears. Is that a potential, maybe even likely outcome? Of course it is.
to me,
But
he just wasn't a Jeffries player, is what I'm saying.
no. But he
Wasn't
did play
wasn't
for
a
Jim
Jeffries
Irvin.
fan.
Remember, he's in the backroom team there. So
Potentially.
clearly
Yeah.
he saw something during his time for him to go. It's worth giving it another go. And the context of this move seems to have been wasn't particularly happy with the fact that he didn't play any sort of role against Linfield, so he wanted to move on. Out went the bat signals to other teams, and Portadown were the team that answered that. So he's a Portadown player. Maybe this will look. It's not totally last chance saloon, but for him to be in the same space or being talked about in the same area within the league as he had done previously, this is a bit of a
It's not last chance
put up a shut
saloon, but
up.
it's next door
No,
to it.
but it's put up. Yeah, I put up a shut up, and like he did have a good preseason for Ballymena, so maybe he's the man. But yeah, not brilliant start for Portadown against Carrick away and Dungannon at home. They get nothing and not even score a goal, but they have only conceded two. So here's what I'll say about Dungannon. Junior came on, great, but they do feel slightly blunt. But they're a very solid football team.
Yeah, not a bad side. Like no one thought that Dungannon were going to be bad this year, but does every team in the league not just need a striker that scores them 20 goals a year? And that's what, that's what everybody wants, but it's not going to happen. And not everybody can do that.
And then is that what surprises you slightly that Nathaniel Ferris is a lock all player once again?
Good segue there. That was very good. Um,
That's why they pay me nothing.
in a way, I'm not a bit surprised because that was, where he, learned his trade as such. Fantastic player for them. Got a nice handy move to the Glens. Didn't really play much. I got
Like his time at the Oval was over.
Oh,
That was very
100%.
clear.
But got very well paid for doing very little. To be honest, did he do anything for Glentoran in that year and a half? Nothing of note. Did he win any trophies?
He never
No.
progressed
No,
from
never
impact
progressed.
sub.
He never progressed from a lock all player to a Glentoran player. Which is a difficult move to do. Was there for the guts of a year, then moved to Glenavon, and then has moved back to a club who were very, very good to him, and he was very good to them, and it all worked out very well. So maybe just best for both parties that he's now back at Loughgall.
Yeah, like and this is what I tweeted out in that in a league where strikers are at a minimum,
Hmm.
especially ones with Irish League experience, and you can get into well, what's the penalty ratio there with his time at Loughgall, but still, like no one was like, this is what we need. I know I kept fantasy putting him to Portadown, but that they may have said we've got our crew there. Maybe they went no Nathaniel, yes to Ben Kennedy, but even you kind of go, was it for Bangor, was it Carrick, or even if you're going to go right, he's not. There's no seat for him within the top flight.
Yep.
Glenavon last year, like he's away to a rival in Loughgall. Maybe their budget's busted at the minute, and it wasn't going to work out financial wise. But that's less of a why didn't Glenavon want him, but the fact that he's at somebody else in the league is not helpful at all to their push.
No, especially after being there last year, maybe just didn't see enough in him. Maybe didn't even think he was going to be available. But in my eyes, Glenavon have built their squad and are going to be settled with that. For now anyway. I think they're going to be solid enough. Obviously, a 4-1 win. To bounce back from their very first little slip up in the championship. So they're I think Ferris is a sensible signing for Loughgall too because they'll be a team that are absolutely in the mix this year. Always are, always the old proverbial tough place to go at Lakeview. So them having a player of Nathaniel Ferris's quality will only improve their chances of getting up this season.
This is my total obsession, and I appreciate that's what this is. But we'll end this section with now he did come on for Larne, right? Benji McGee feels like out of that whole attacking room of what Gibson, Lusty, O'Connor, Paul O'Neill, is there O'Hara as well? Have I said O'Connor? Like there's McKendry even can be a forward. UKEC as well. Is that 8 or something? Like he fit? Maybe not. But in late transfer loan zone, he feels like he might be prime candidate there. Who do you think he would have the biggest impact for if he was to move? Not saying anybody is saying that he is.
I'd take him at the Blues, 100% I would. Um, yeah,
Larne aren't going to give him to the
I know they're
Blues.
not, but I would take him. Maybe him and Nathaniel will get the band back together. Everybody back to Loughgall for a wee
Nah.
run. That would be
I just
ridiculous.
I say this because I look at both Dungannon and Portadown. I think Benji McGee would change maybe both of these teams' season.
I think he starts for both of those teams.
Oh,
In
he
my eye.
absolutely
Yeah,
does.
absolutely. So, there's this is going to be like a 31st of August move, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
Um,
I think he might be a step up above Bangor. I don't think there's room for him within Carrick.
would you want to go
Do
to
the
Carrick?
Reds? I think Reds have got a lot of kind of players there where they'd rather just stick with what they have. Of course, the Crews would take him, but
Can the Crews afford to take him as a thing? That's probably
well,
one.
it's just more like
It, it's
I don't know.
it sits well with me that he would go to either Portadown or Dungannon. That seems sensible and viable, and probably what Larne would want. He's
Yeah,
not gonna be annoying them at the top of the table. Do you know what I mean?
no,
So
we will.
seems reasonable. Start that rumor.
Yeah, well, that's clearly what I've done. Let's sit and ponder, McGuiggan. Let's sit and ponder. Let's go for our championship catch up, and it's a bit more of a catch up now because there's actually two game weeks after Glenavon had their own mini crisis. Crisis no more. They beat Newry on a whole load of games on Tuesday night. Is there a Tuesday night fixture coming up? It feels like we sometimes have like an
We always do
early.
that at the start. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I know.
But it's not
Shitty bit.
happening this year.
I don't know.
Rubbish.
Not paying
Boring.
attention. Europe. I blame Nifl TV. Anna United beat Rathrilland 4-2. Ards 2-2 with Dundela. Institute lose 2-1 at home to Ballymallard. Loughgall 2-2 with Newington. These are all the Tuesday games. Strabane Athletic get their first win in the championship against Mola Park 3-1. We talked about that Glenavon Newry game. Queens beat the Welders 2-1, and then Warrenpoint Town beat Armagh City. After two games, no team had got 6 points, which is very unique and might tell you what this championship is going to be like. And then we go to Saturday. Newry beat Rathrilland 2-1, bounce back. Dundela, Anna United 2-2. Glenavon thump Strabane 4-1 at home. Welders get back on track with victory over Armagh. Institute 0-0 with Loughgall. Myola Park then beat Ballymallard 2-0. Newington, who looked like they're starting the season really nicely, 2-1 against Queens. And Warrenpoint Town lose 3-1 against Ards. That means the standings are in the championship. Doesn't really matter, but like Ards up there with 7, Newington with 7, Glenavon, Welders, Newry all on 6, and then it's a bit of a muchness. Rathrilland looking like the early loss leaders here, 3 losses on the bounce. Armagh with only 1 point. Not a massive amount of surprises, bar the fact that a victory would see them shoot up the league, but Anna Intent seem to be the only team that I thought were going to do better that aren't.
Yeah, well, I mean, they lost against the Newton side, who, as you say, have got off to a really, really good start. Um, Win against Rathrilland, which seems handy enough, and then a draw at the Duns isn't, it's not ridiculous football. Like it's not like they're miles off. Listen, it's as we all know, that's the league that keeps on giving that wee championship, and it deserves a bit more respect in my eyes. Really, really good quality of football down there. If you ever get a chance to go down to games, 100% do it because. Um, as we say, there doesn't seem to be any Tuesday night fixtures in the Irish Premiership at the minute. So make a wee move down to I don't know your local, Strabane your local, go for it. I don't know, Institute your local, make it happen. Have a wee
Well,
look.
after treating us mean and keeping us keen, Friday nights have come back, and we've got 2 games on Saturday to look forward to this week, and it is an old tasty favourite. Is it tasty in 2026? I think it might be after the way they've been playing. Cliftonville, Linfield, are you scared?
Scared of nothing, not anymore. We're gonna win the league. No. I am a bit sort of scared of Cliftonville midfield wise and defence wise, but not going forward. Especially at Windsor. I think we should be okay. Just one of those ones that forever seems to be a difficult game for Linfield. We really struggled against the Reds last year, especially at Solitary. We did a lot of messing about for no real reason at all. Listen, I just don't see it being a massive bother. Um, I'll, I'm looking at the flipping history. Like last year was really bad for us. Only beat them once last year in 4 meetings, and they beat us at Windsor near the end. So maybe I should be worried.
You see,
But then last year was
I feel like I would have
horrible.
known that if it wasn't for the fact that I think I was maybe asleep during most of
Yeah,
those
most
games.
most of those games were on a Sunday at about 4 o'clock when everybody had just watched an old film and were very, very tired from a week's work. Um, just not
You talk about the
not
players or the
very
fans?
both. both very all very unmemorable games last season. I don't actually know if I was at many. I was only at one of those maybe. Um, so we'll find out. It's very early on in the season to actually say, X, Y, or Z will happen. But from what I've seen, it's I suppose one of those I've seen both teams, and the, Linfield to me look like they should be able to beat Cliftonville, especially at home. If I was at Solitude, I'd be telling a very, very different tale. They looked very solid against the Crews that night, and the Crews were very lucky to get even one. But they'll be well up for it because two very, very good performances to start the season, and just tricky enough for them on the big pitch. Like,
Cliftonville should be going into this with the most amount of confidence they've had in years. And what I think the key factor will be is that a lot of concerns going into this, at least for me, it was that do Cliftonville have a back line which can properly take the rough and tumble? And the feeling was for me is I don't think so. Now, home against the Crews, away against Bangor, those aren't the big tests. Linfield away from home are the big tests. Offord and maybe Fitzpatrick together, ooh, that we'll see. Cross our fingers. That is the big test. So as much as we've seen Hale and Quinn and even McStravick get the goal there, coming at it, finding that connective tissue, passing around them, their opposition, and I'm sure Linfield will have to deal with that themselves, is what will Cliftonville do when they have to defend against some top-end attacking players in this league? I think they'll struggle. I think this is going to be 2-0, maybe 2-1 Blues.
yeah, I'd like to settle on 2-1. I feel like that's a sensible um suggestion for this Friday evening's game.
Sensible. Well, like,
Sensible.
I don't know what happens because this will be the test for the Blues. If Cliftonville go ahead particularly early, how will they react? Because if we're sitting there with 20 minutes, or even let's say it's whatever it is, 60th minute, in comes McClelland with a header from a corner. If Linfield push forward, will Cliftonville show the might that they have and pick you off on the counter? I see that being a potential scenario as well, but I think you've got to believe they'll take some sort of momentum from that game against Glentoran. And it's another home game. That can't be allowed.
Yeah, I don't know why
That can't be
three
allowed.
in a row.
I don't
No
know.
fun.
Okay, 2-1 there for the Blues. Cliftonville, if you win, you're going into Saturday, top of the league. So get you. Could actually be an entertaining game on this occasion. Ballymena, Glentoran, it's the BBC stream game. Both teams coming in off the back of a loss. Maybe not what we expected, but here we are. And a tiny bit of pressure, more so on Glentoran, to try and get something from this. I think this might be a weird, tetchy 0-0.
Ah, no chance. Don't see 0-0 in this, to be honest. Ballymena's first home game of the season. Glenn's coming up the road on a Friday night. I think there's every chance that Ballymena spoil a Glentoran away day, which would be very enjoyable for me because it'll be two Glens losses in a row.
Yeah.
But both teams obviously got off to, you know, similar starts. Glens winning 2-0 and then Ballymena winning 2-0, obviously at Windsor Park. But and last week both losing 2-1. So there's every chance that it'll be a tight one. I think it's not gonna be a game of old where one team runs away with it. Um, I just have this sneaky feeling that I don't see 0-0. I think both teams have enough players in forward areas to make this really, really um high scoring. 2-2, is that unreasonable for a Friday night on the BBC?
I don't know if
I
that's
don't
I don't
think
know if
so.
that's actually allowed, but
No goals on a Friday night. No goals.
let's see if they can prove us all wrong. My gut moving towards 0-0 is that it would probably suit both teams. Like Ballymena might go, hey, 0-0 against Glens at home. That's progression in our eyes, and Glentoran might think this Ballymena team have a few scary attacking propositions in front of us. A draw here isn't the worst. We can go back and refigure some things. 20 minutes to go. Let's not get too adventurous. That's where I think it is. I don't know if anybody's going to start strong, and then if it's sitting there 0-0 with 20 minutes to go, let's not go crazy here, guys. It is where I see it going. But yeah, I can also see defensive calamities, and it's 3-2, something crazy. But hey, both teams, show us your mettle. Obviously, if Glens don't have Hooben, that maybe backs up my hypothesis. Carrick Coleraine. Big test for Coleraine going down to Taylor's Avenue. Do you think they have the flow to take on Carrick? I think they might.
I think they might, yeah. Coleraine will stroll this. I don't see them having any problems. I think they were too wise and Riley throughout the whole sort of run up to this game. I'd say that Higgins will have no bother and setting them up to just really attack that Carrick team. I kept saying it, like, Carrick are decent, but they're not gonna cause anybody in the top six any problems. Um, I think it's 2-0 Coleraine for me. I think that they've enough in it, no problem.
Yeah, I kind of think Coleraine are going to want a bit of a reaction. Like they haven't, like they beat Dungan away from home, excellent. But I think they're gonna want to flex their muscles. And going away to Carrick is a great opportunity in that they're going to be battling against you, and Carrick are going to show Coleraine the respect that they deserve. And I wonder, will that be slightly to their detriment? Like, if Carrick are going to get anything from this game, they're going to make it down and dirty. They're going to make it properly physical and tight and add a bit of grit to this game. And will Coleraine players the way they want to play? Will they react well? Because if Carrick can just stop that series of passes reaching 8, 9, 10, flowing back and forward, you need to get them out of the rhythm. And I think across 90 minutes, that's going to be difficult for Carrick. And I think they're going to get caught out, maybe a goal in the first half, and I think they might run out of steam. I actually think this might be 3-0, 3-1 Coleraine.
Yeah, sensible call in my eyes. Yeah. So
Thanks.
see how that goes.
Swifts against Bangor. I think Dungannon should do all right here, maybe 2-0.
Quite easily. Yeah. Just depends on what Bangor turn up. I haven't really obviously only seen them once this year. So I just don't know how well they go on the road. I think their fortress is at home. And it's just one where I don't see them getting. It's just sort of in my eyes, Dungannon at Stangmore is a tough place to go. Whereas Bangor, they're totally used to winning at home. I just don't see it being anything more than a Dungannon win,
Like,
Peter.
I can see Bangor somewhat trying to shut down Dungannon and just holding on against the chances that the Swifts will create. However, like I think this might be a big day for players like Corey Smith. Like, where will he? He hasn't really figured massively for Dungannon yet, but in this type of game, he might be required. Like, the longer Dungannon keep this 0-0, the better, and try and slip something. The problem is, if Dungannon get an early goal, Bangor just might be caught. Like, we're yet to see them, and of course it'll be one game, but I don't know if they're really built to go chase a game. So let's get that goal, hold on, and perhaps they've got all that physicality. They'll do that from some sort of set piece. But I think Dungannon, it might just be 1-0, but I think Dungannon are going to win here.
Yeah, totally agree. And I don't think Rodney will be too annoyed that they haven't scored. Maybe 6 or 7 against Bangor.
No,
Can't see that happening either, to be honest.
no.
It's not a game where Dungannon are gonna run away with it, barring a ridiculous 2 red card or something for Bangor. But I think they should definitely have enough to see it through at least 2-0.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the worst thing though for Dungannon themselves. In the same way I was talking about that game for Portadown against them, and that that they've had that tight game against Coleraine at home. They have a tricky game away against Portadown where they hold on. Yeah, kind of get their mojo flowing. A team who you might say have got their mojo flowing is Crusaders. Like, this suddenly feels like quite a big game down at the bottom of the league. Crews against Portadown, 6 o'clock kickoff, so you can all watch it if you've got your Niffle subscription or you just bat one off. Like, I think there's always pressure on every manager this early on, but like, David Jeffrey will not want to start this season 3 losses on the bounce and then Coleraine coming to their patch on Friday.
There's a question: has David Jeffrey, ever lost 3 league games at the start of a season?
Maybe.
Do we know? Maybe is the answer. Maybe not. Really, really good game that actually. I
I
quite
I think so too. It could be a bit
like that.
like Goal Bonanza, or of course just not.
Yeah, 4-3 Cruise or something ridiculous. It screams to me, or 0-0. Um, I'm quite interested in that game to see how it goes because, especially at Seaview, it's such a decent game in my eyes. Both teams sort of stuttered at the start of this season. Obviously, Crews getting a real good win yesterday, but can just see something in that game being really, really interesting and tasty. A couple of big challenges I would suggest from both
Yeah.
teams as well. Proper old school Irish League football game, that one. So I'm gonna go out on a limb. 4-3 Crews. Why not?
Wow. Tell you what,
Bit of fun about it.
worth the dough. I would love that, wouldn't it? That'd be such a. And Cruise fans would love it as well. Yeah, it's funny. I think it's going to be 2-2. Obviously, Portadown have to learn how to score, and they might, by hook or by crook. I think their players probably won't mind that pitch. Famous last words here. I think they'll quite like playing it about. And, like, Cruise clearly have nice width, but I don't know if they have that same kind of penetration centrally. I think they'll need that in the long run. Maybe they just need a player or two to come in there to fix that. But yeah, I think it could be 2-2 is what I'm going for. But in turn, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a it just ends up being 2-1 either way. That could be a lot closer than people think, and would be a big momentum swing. Like either of those teams get 3 points, they'll be buzzing. And the
100%. I think,
and the need to, because like those games against each other, it's gonna be the difference between 11th, 10th, and maybe 8th.
yeah, 100%. I think it's a one goal deficit in this game. There's not much to split the two teams. So yeah, 2-2-1 sounds all right for me as well. Maybe not. Maybe my 4-3 sounds ridiculous now, but who knows?
Hey, look, no one could sound as ridiculous as Matthew Tipton last week and all his suggestions. I joke. I joke. He felt the heat, is what I've pretty much been told from Mr. Tipton. But that's, hey, everybody else isn't coming on here putting their neck on the line. That's what you and everybody else throughout the next few weeks do and will continue to do. Mark, is there a lovely feeling in the air in Linfield land before I say goodbye?
Yeah, loads of it. Loads of it. Yeah, we're sort of by hook or by crook. We'll get through this season and see what happens.
We'll have to see. Mark, it's been a delight as always. Until next time, cheerio.
Thank you, sir. All the best.